Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Word Up, where tonight it's me and Pastor Akin. We're flying solo because Pastor
I,
Ian is flying British Airways to Zimbabwe. So it's us tonight, and we're going to attempt to continue through Revelation 13. I just want to say hello to a few people. Laura, Matt, Nikita, Anne. Who else we got? Maria. Daryl. Hi, Daryl. Daryl and Catherine, probably. Angela. Yep. Hello. Good to see you on the broadcast. And yes, as I say, we're going to get into Revelation 13. But hello to Pastor Akin. Good
Hi
evening.
there. Hi, Ben. Great to be with you here on the program today. And yes, here we are without Pastor Ian. Like you said, he's off to Zimbabwe with a team, off on a mission there. So, yeah, we pray for them there. They're going to have an amazing time there. And welcome to everyone who's joined us this evening. You're very welcome.
Yeah, good stuff. Right. Let's have a look. Okay, let's have a look at Revelation 13 then. I feel I should read the whole chapter because, I think last week, Pastor Akin and Ian, they got up to, say, verse 10, which was really
Yeah.
interesting, actually, because there was a bit of translation discrepancy between the two of them, which I thought was really, really interesting. And I will, we'll get to that. Right, let's have a look. Revelation 13, which talks about the first beast. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 diadems on its horns and blasphemous names on its heads. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard, its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth marvelled as they followed the beast, and they worshipped the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like the beast, and who can fight against it? And the beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. Also, it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. And authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation, and all who dwell on earth will worship it. Everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is to be taken captive, to captivity he goes. If anyone is to be slain with the sword must he be slain. Here is a call for the endurance and faith of the saints. The second beast. Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. It exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence, and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. It performs great signs, even making fire come down from heaven to earth in front of people. And by the signs that it is allowed to work in the presence of the beast, it deceives those who dwell on the earth, telling them to make an image for the beast that was wounded by the sword and yet lived. And it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. Also, it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast, or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. There we go, the 2 beasts of Revelation. So last time, Pastor Ian and Pastor Akin were going through more or less the first beast and kind of saying what his role was and a little bit about him and theories about him. Pastor Akin, did you want to just summarise what you went over last time?
Awesome. Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Ben. It was just interesting that when we started looking at this, we see from the previous chapter, we were making a distinction between the beast. Obviously, we were looking at the first beast last week, for the beast that's seen at the beginning of chapter 13, and a distinction between this beast and the dragon that we had actually been looking at in chapter 12. And so we wanted to make that quite clear, that the dragon was a separate entity from this beast that we're looking at here. And we were also, again, we went over the fact that, going through chapter 12, we were really looking at things from a heavenly perspective of what was going on in the heavenlies. And, we see towards, we're looking at some point in chapter 12 that, the devil is cast down, and he's angry, and he's going after the woman. He's going after the plans and the purpose of God, doing all he can to thwart them, because he knows his time is short. And then we move to chapter 13, and we're looking at this first beast, and this beast is now obviously on the earth, at the end of time, as it were. And we looked at the fact that the beast had authority, the beast had power, and we see that there is this great desire through the beast and the dragon for worship. So from the worship to be taken away from God to actually worshiping this beast, and thereby actually worshiping the dragon. So we were looking at that, and I think one of the interesting things that we looked at last week was this whole issue of how we're referring to Daniel chapter 7 about the vision that God gave to that Daniel had, really, about the end of times and the empires that were going to arise in the last days. And we were looking at this, and I think it wasn't through some I don't think it was through any commentary that we had come across or anything, but we started talking about what if this isn't actually physical countries or nations or regions, but we were actually looking at it in the that what if it was for example an alliance of religions. And we were just thinking about there are so many religions that they have a coverage, they go through of the whole world. You look at, if we take we didn't want to obviously mention any, but we said the major religions of the world today, if you look at them, and if they were to come together, if they were to unite together, that would actually be a worldwide alliance that would cover the whole world, as against looking at a particular nation or a particular country or a world power as we see them in these days. And that was throughout the week, I've just been thinking about that sort of an alliance. If there would be someone who would head up an alliance like that, the kind of wide sweeping authority that they would have, the influence that they would have over all the world. And that's, at one point here, you see the people say that who is like the beast, who is able to make war with him. You could see if someone had, was the head of such an alliance, that would kind of, like, they would inspire that kind of awe, wouldn't they? Because they would basically have influence over the whole world. And so we came into that. And obviously, like you alluded to earlier, we looked at verse 10. And I was looking at my translation of verse 10 this is the New King James Version I've got here, where it says that he who leads into captivity will go into captivity, and he who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. But obviously, I think you've got the translation that Pastor Ian had as well, which it comes across differently, and that was quite interesting as well. But I think when you look at the second part of the verse where it says, "Here is the patience and the faith of the saints," it kind of like ties in with the whole thing of the fact that if you people who will be led into captivity there's no escape from the captivity, there's no escape from the sword, and the only way of overcoming the sword and that the captivity and the sword is by patience and faith in God. So brief recap.
Yeah, that verse is interesting, because I get what you were kind of coming up against, because is it to Christians to say there's going to be persecution, you're going to be held captive, you're going to die by the sword, but all this must happen, you have the victory in the end, there is going to be persecution? Or I was looking at Matthew Henry, 16th century Puritan, and he was of the other opinion that this verse was addressed to the persecutors. You know, if anyone is taking if anyone leads people into captivity, like your one says, I think leads people.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right. It says, "He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity." That's what it says.
There's almost talking to the persecutors, and you who slay people by the sword, you'll be slain by the sword.
That's right.
It was interesting. It's like, oh wow, it's got to be one of those kind of Bible anomalies that but I guess both is true. God will have ultimate vengeance, and Christians will have ultimate victory. So in a
Yes.
way, it's both true. But it was really interesting. I kind of jumped on it when I saw you two kind of like coming at it differently. I was like, oh wow, look at this. So that was good. I just wish I could read Greek, and like really get to the nuts and bolts of it. But no, it was interesting. So we've come to like that point, which is like all about the first beast, and it was interesting. One of the points I kind of looked at was you got this kind of um, man, or representation of man, who is almost possessed by the dragon, the devil, to blaspheme and to persecute and to stir up people against Christians. And some of the things it says, like he was given a platform, and the beast was given a mouth, uttering haughty and blasphemous words, allowed it to exercise authority for 42 months. And I'm like, wow, the beast was given a mouth. And if we're thinking about symbolic language, you could say like Facebook Live, for instance, is giving us a mouth. It's giving us a platform to speak. And of course, John would have no concept of computers or the internet way back then. But you kind of think, well, I wonder how that would be made manifest, and different stuff like it opened its mouth to utter blasphemies against God. You think of things like propaganda and TV propaganda and all that kind of stuff, like Russia and Ukraine, that kind of thing. And you just think, wow, how do these things that are trying to be described back then, how do they translate into what he's actually seeing?
Absolutely.
So
I think we've mentioned this before, haven't we, Ben? We said this before, haven't we? That how can someone who lived in that time describe things that are happening now? He's just going to pick up things that a mouth. Okay, a mouth. We all know what a mouth is, but maybe what he was seeing was something totally different. He said, "You're right. What if he was seeing someone who was on the television?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And how is he going to describe when that the television hasn't been hasn't been invented at that time? It really is. Absolutely.
I think we've mentioned it before. Mike Bickle of the International House of Prayer, he was given a prophecy like way back in the early 80s about Chinese people in paddy fields watching prayer and worship on little TVs in their hand, like all over China. And of course, now we've got mobile phones that can go on YouTube and watch the International House of Prayer. It's kind of seeing these things come to fulfillment. Daryl's just telling me that Alfie is watching. Alfie is Daryl's dog. So good evening, Alfie. I hope you enjoy the broadcast. Anyway, so let's get on to the second beast, like this next person that kind of comes along. It says, then I saw another beast rising out of the earth, and it had two horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. So the first beast was rising out of the sea, and if we want to go to symbolism, the sea seems to symbolise, in the commentaries I've read, the sea of nations, if you like, the mass of the different kind of nations, the chaotic mass of nations, if you like, is what the commentators said. And then this one rising out of the earth, and this seemed to be described as someone rising out of the, like, demonically out of the abyss. And we know about the abyss from previous chapters, that is opened and all sorts of horrors and demonic activity is unleashed on the earth out of the abyss. And so that's what he kind of was speaking of. But it was interesting, like this second beast had two horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. So I don't know what you came across with that description.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Ben. Yes, I mean, again, it's like John is going into a great, if you like, detail, trying to make this distinction between this beast and the other beast. And I remember last week we picked up on something about this term about the Antichrist. And in some of the commentaries that you come across there, trying to, if you like, define this anti, is anti going to be the opposite of Jesus? So we look at Jesus, he was anointed by the Holy Spirit, and he went about doing good and healing all who were oppressed by the devil. And so if you like, the opposite of that is, if you like, an evil person who's going about, destroying and wrecking people's lives and doing everything that the devil would want him to do. But in the comments I was reading, it was saying that the Antichrist is not going to be presented in that manner. He isn't going to be, if you like, a vicious dictator who's going to be, trying to, to initiate a world war and bring destruction upon them. He isn't going to present himself in that manner at all. In fact, it says that he is going to be, if you like, as himself says that, the devil presents himself as an angel of light. And so
Yes,
when
yeah,
when we see this, if you like, the horns of a lamb, a lamb we know to be a gentle type of animal, a gentle creature. So this Antichrist, this person, this beast we're looking at here, is actually going to present himself as someone respectable, someone who's a man of peace, a person of peace, I should say, a person of peace, a person who's looking out for the well-being of the world. And yet, when he begins to speak, he still has there is this something evil and destructive about him, in that as it says here, that he spoke like a dragon. So he looked in appearance to be one thing, but actually when he spoke out of his heart, when he actually spoke out of his his motivation, what his inspiration was, what was on the inside of him, and then he spoke as a dragon. And so he's presenting himself here, and this is something I guess we're going to have to, in one sense, we're going to have to get to terms with this, that this beast is not going to be someone that will be easily identifiable as being who he actually is. He's going to be. He's actually going to be like, as it says, as we know the term, a wolf in sheep's clothing, as it were.
yeah, yeah. And a dragon, we kind of, with the language, like I could kind of say I had a few teachers that were dragons, and I've met a few nurses. But dragons, actually, they're not dumb kind of mythological creatures. When you think of dragons, like Smaug in the Hobbit, they're wise beyond anything, and so it's like the appearance of a lamb, but as wily as a fox and as wise as a deadly serpent, that kind of thing. But the imagery is of this of deception almost. That it was a lamb, like you say, a lamb in a wolf in sheep's clothing. So it exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence, and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. We'll get to that mortal wound bit. But yeah, this person seems to be given the authority. There's a relationship there between this lesser beast, who the first beast has got 10 horns, and this beast has got 2 horns. So it's like, horns always represent strength and power in the Bible, and so it's like lesser power, but still appointed with all this authority. He's like one of the Hitler's kind of henchmen that are doing his bidding and promoting him. But we got a little word about this mortal wound keeps coming up. That one of the heads of the beast, these got 7 heads in the description, had a mortal wound. And again here, the beast that had the mortal wound was healed. And it goes on to say that this second beast performs great signs and wonders, making fire come down from heaven in front of the people. And it's allowed to work in the presence of the beast. It goes on to say about deception. But it doesn't say this in the text, but you kind of wonder that this first beast has been healed of like a deadly wound that would have killed it, and this second beast is able to do all these great signs and wonders and all this kind of stuff. And I wonder if somehow the second beast healed the first beast of a deadly wound, and therefore gained superiority in his sight and became his right hand man, and that the fact that this beast who was worshipped and loved had a mortal wound and then was brought back to life may account for all its popularity and its sway over the world. That there's this great kind of rescue, miraculous healing kind of thing going on between the two of them, and it only adds to their renown in the earth. But it's all kind of speculation, isn't it? You can't
Absolutely. And I think very much so. But like you said, it's like there is, whichever which way I don't know how people would like to put labels or describe this desire that man seems to have for, even though they don't always articulate it the right way. The desire for the supernatural, isn't there? So
Mm,
people they want to look into horoscopes. They look into things like seances. People get involved sometimes in witchcraft because there is that kind of, like, I don't know whether I can describe it as something that's innate. We all have it in us, that there is something greater, something that we can't see, we can't touch, we can't control, but it's out there, and access to that thing gives us great power. Even when, you spoke about, you mentioned Hitler and his henchmen, and there's been these accounts, whether they are accurate or not, of how those who were at the upper echelons of the of power during that time, they were very much curious about the occult. They were looking for a super power or a weapon or something they could access that would give them victory in the war that they were in. And it's this, like you rightly said, it's like with this sort of desires in people's lives, the scene will be set, as the Bible seems to be telling us, that when these things, like you said, that someone who is mortally wounded and being healed, I don't know, like you said, I don't know whether it's a resurrection or whatever it is, but something that should have killed them, it doesn't kill them. They live through it. And the power that has healed this person or raised up or whatever it is going to be, it's been attributed to someone else. And these two people, they're the combination of these two individuals. It
mm,
seems as though it sets the scene for people to then begin to worship them. And it also harkens back to what the Lord said. I think it was in Matthew, when he was speaking about people who were committing signs and miracles, doing signs and miracles. But he didn't send them. He said that they were not. I didn't. At the end of the time when he comes to judge, he says that, depart from me, you workers of iniquity, because I
yeah,
never knew you. You might have done. He didn't deny the fact that they did miracles, but he said these miracles were not done in my name. They were not done under my authority or in my power. There was another authority, another power in which they were actually exercising to perform these miracles. And I think it's one of the commentaries I was reading, I think it really brought this out, that we need to be careful as Christians, that we're not running after signs and wonders and miracles, that our focus should not be on signs and wonders and miracles, because as he said, he went back to and we look at this when he says that he calls down fire from heaven here, and he says that it's just like in the day of Elijah when he called fire down from heaven. He challenged the people, and he says, whichever God answers by fire, serve that God,
yeah,
worship that God. And obviously Elijah called down the fire, the people worship God. But in this case, it's like this, beast is able to call down a fire from the heavens, as it were, but it's not of God. And yet this is what the same thing is going to cause people to worship these beasts and to worship the dragon, and not to worship God. So we have to be careful. The commentator was saying that we have to be careful that we don't become fixated on signs and wonders and miracles. And we should see from the scriptures that there are people who are able to, or the devil uses them to produce these false miracles and these false signs and wonders. And again, he
mm,
spoke about Moses as well. Some of the signs that he was able to perform before Pharaoh. Pharaoh's magicians were able to perform the same signs as well.
yeah,
So he
yeah,
was just saying that there should be a great emphasis on the things that that Satan cannot counterfeit. So he spoke about love and truth, for example. He mentioned those two things as well, by way of an example, so that we shouldn't just pursue these supernatural signs and wonders and miracles, because at the end of the day, there was a purpose behind it. And as the Lord Jesus Christ said, he says, in order to deceive many, that was the purpose behind it. It's deception. He wants to deceive people into thinking that these are actually God,
yeah,
and that to take worship away from the one true God and bring that worship to the dragon. And that's what we need to be mindful of. That's what Satan is at the heart of all of this deception, is to get people to worship Satan and not to worship God.
yeah. And you kind of wonder again, like about how these things will be achieved. Like it talks about great signs, even making fire come down from heaven in the earth in front of people. And by the signs is allowed to work. It deceives those who dwell on the earth, telling them to make an image of the beast. So this great power that this person seems apparently to have influences people to do
Yeah.
things. And you think about some of the technology these days, internet, artificial intelligence, uh, all the kind of the influencing kind of software. I heard something the other day that certain nations who are opposed to the West um, kind of make an algorithm for things like TikTok and YouTube, so that for the Western world, dumbed down kind of videos appear, like silly things about cats, or just loads of comedy things and silliness and all these bits and pieces. But for their own population, they insert an algorithm that is all about education, all about advancement, specifically for, and it's all directed to influence their particular nation towards attainment, and while the West is being dumbed down. It's just a little thing I heard. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But you think about that. Those of us that have got TikTok and YouTube, the times you can sit there and just aimlessly scroll and just watch entertainment, yes, but absolute silliness that's just getting into your brain and like wasting time when you could be doing productive things. So that was just a little thing that I'd heard. It's interesting, these things that are out there, and us trying to put people have done it for ages, centuries, to try and pinpoint these things. But so this beast does these signs to deceive, and gets them to make an image for the beast that was wounded by the sword. Again, talking about the wound. And it says the first beast was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak, and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. So it's almost like what I've just said. It makes this image, and it enables it to speak and influence. That like, I suppose in the 50s, I remember hearing a quote like, a Christian family got their first TV, and on the box when it came in was the slogan, "Let the world into your home," and immediately the father was like, "Get it out!" it's that kind of thing. All these entertainments we have. It's a hard kind of line, isn't it? Because people need entertainment. I need entertainment. I need downtime. But we're an entertainment kind of obsessed people, really, in the West. And I can see it, in different cultures where attainment is promoted more than it is here.
Yes.
It's just, it's one of those social observations that you see. But again, going back to this, you just kind of see how these things might play out.
I think, I think absolutely, Ben. I think when we read again, we're just going back to John being where he was at that point in history and where we are now. It's like we can look at these things now when it says that he deceives those who dwell on the earth by the signs which is granted to do in the sight of these. Telling those who dwell on the earth, to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. And you think about this image, and it's very much. Obviously, we're just talking about what we know now, but we don't know how far technology is going to advance in the next 5, 10, or 15 years. But you can actually think of now, even when we look at things like if we just look at TikTok for an example, it's something that someone has created, and its influence is worldwide. And so you kind of like when you try and you think of artificial intelligence, you think of the advancements in technology now. How is it not possible for something to be created, like you said, that can go into everyone's home, go into, when we, even on our phones now, everyone, I don't know the percentage of people on the face of the earth who've got a mobile phone. So these things are actually right now, they're able to, we're talking about this beast calling down fire from heaven. And as in the same way you think about Elijah, when this contest with the servants of Baal, there must have been some way in which the information went out. I don't know how they got it out, but they got the information out and said, "Look, everyone, come and assemble here, and this is what's going to happen." And think how much easier it is to do that now. If someone was, he really wanted to, to put on a show for people, to say, "Look, I'm going to show you that this person is." this is more than just another human being. Whatever he's done, there's something supernatural about. There's something godlike about him. And if I can use, they would probably use that phrase, and he would say at such and such a time, tune in and get on the whatever it is. It's going to be on the CNN, on Sky, BBC, everything. And we're going to call down fire from heaven. Then you will all know that this is the real God. And you can think now it's so easy with the technology that's available now to do that. And even people who are not actually able to watch it at that particular point in time, they can always go back, because it's going to be recorded. It'll be on, you can go back and have a look at the event again and watch it over and over, and keep, passing the information around. So in a very short space of time, everybody can become aware of that event, and everyone will have access to that, and everyone will have this, if you like, everyone will have the same image and this same information that would speak and be telling them that this is the person that you need to worship. This is your God. And I know it's a bit like I've seen some if you like trailers of superhero movies, and one particular one where it's like, I think this is like a Superman one, where because he's able to defeat an enemy who was going to destroy the earth, he's like, the people have got to that place where they want to begin to worship him, even though he's not. And in this case, he's not actually asking for that, but they're just in a sense, out of gratitude, he saved us from this enemy. They want to begin to worship him. And it's almost as like you rightly said, sometimes I think that even some of these films, they set the scene, they are setting the scene for this kind of individual to arise, where he's going to be able to do something that no one else can do. And like you said, that this deception where he appears to be the lamb and he's also a dragon, he might have that exterior character of not really wanting people to worship, but in his heart, that's exactly what he wants. And even like you rightly said, this entertainment, all these films, they're preparing our minds to actually receive someone like this, to look for this sort of a hero, this sort of person that has supernatural power, that's going to watch over us and protect us, and in return, all we have to do is just worship this person. And very, very much so, everything is from our perspective, is almost like it's in place for these things to take place.
I don't want to feed conspiracy theories, but who'd have thought, like 4 years ago, that the world could be shut down like that? It's just, you wouldn't ever conceive of it, that the world would be shut down. We'd have to be locked down in our homes for a period of time, the world over. That would seem like an impossibility, like science fiction. Yet it happened. And events, like remember the Twin Towers in 2001? As soon as that was happening, like every major news channel across the world, we was all watching, what was going on. And the death of Queen Elizabeth, that was a worldwide event watched by, a good portion of the world's population. And like you're saying, these things are not impossible, to happen. So let's get to the big one, the mark of the beast. So it says in verse 16, also it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast, or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Now that whole 666 thing, horror films have blown that up, like probably beyond its significance, and that's why everyone thinks of the devil, 666, all that kind of stuff. It's interesting. I mean, I had probably the misfortune of watching the Omen films growing up, and that was all tied in with that. The Antichrist and the Mark of the Beast, and all of those things, and even some of the Christian films, like those awful 70s ones, A Thief in the Night and A Distant Thunder. It was all literal kind of, talking about this Mark of the Beast and everything. But yet, it's one of those things that's always held up, that what it's saying is that, this beast will have the power to bring everyone into line, so that only those who worship the beast will be able to buy and sell. And if if you take that mark, then you're free to buy and sell and go about your life, and do all that kind of stuff. And in another way, it marks you as it marks your allegiance to the beast, who is the Antichrist. We know he's the Antichrist, and but this influence, this worldwide kind of superiority of these individuals, the pressure to conform, to do this, is you can hear people saying, "Well, I've got to eat, so I need to do it," and that's the thing, isn't it? It's the pressure, and for Christians, even today in other things, the pressure to conform to certain ways of thinking, to accepting certain behaviours and lifestyles as normal. Even our terminology these days. I read about earlier on about a university professor, because she insisted there were only two sexes. Half of her students walked out of her class. I mean, what? There are just two sexes. No matter how much we try and define like all the different terminologies of I want to be pansexual, I want to be this, that, or the other. It's just words. It's just like semantics. There are biologically two sexes, and it gets to the point where lies become truth because people try and promote an agenda. So this whole thing, you can see the pressure here, that would be applying. Can you imagine if you couldn't feed your family unless you took the mark of the beast, and you had crying children, starving children, the pressure would be immense. And in lots of other ways, Christians have faced persecutions throughout the ages where they've refused to conform or break, deny their faith, on pain of death, and they've died. They've stuck to their guns and died, and you can see that this is the kind of pressure that they'll be on. And again, you can probably make suggestions of how the mark of the beast would come about. People talk about chips under the skin, or that kind of thing. And it's possible that we're moving towards a cashless society. There was a complaint in the paper that these people have gone out, and I've been to places where they don't take cash anymore. You have to pay by card. And it's you see, people have seen for years. Christians have called this for years, about how this could happen. I remember a guy called Barry Smith who used to come to Ashford every year without fail, and he's a New Zealander, and I've probably got one of his books somewhere, and he was all on it about supermarkets and what they had done in New Zealand to promote a cashless society, and his whole message was about the mark of the beast. Now this could happen for years and years. He's gone to glory now, but he was on it about these kind of things. But again, there's probably as many opinions as there are preachers out there, with these kind of things. But did you have any reflections on the mark of the beast and this whole
beast? Yes, thing? Like you said, when you go and you start looking at commentators, there are all sorts of things. I think we mentioned earlier before we came on air about some people that there's a sort of a system where you can you can try and calculate the letters in people's names, and it can come up to the number 666, and they were trying to use that methodology to identify who the Antichrist was. And you come across these things, and like you said, the mark itself, is it going to be the actual number 666, and all these sort of things. And I know I've come across a book that I read many years ago, written by a Christian author, and he was looking into the same thing, I guess, along the lines of Barry Smith, and he was just saying that this mark isn't going to be something that's going to be forced upon people. It's something that people will actually readily want to accept, And he was, and I think that this book must have been written, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 years ago. He was giving an insight into certain things like, now, for example, we've got so many PIN numbers, haven't we? So many passwords, and trying to remember, the PIN number for each card and the password for each account and things that you want to get in there. If you could just have all that information on one chip, that could be inserted into, like I said, the hand or the forehead or whatever part of the body. It would make life so much easier, and also it'd be more. Your personal information will be safe and secure. And he was given examples of where, even diplomats in certain parts of the world, that they would have chips. They had chips implanted in their body, so that if they were kidnapped or anything, they the special forces will be able to locate where they were and rescue them. So he was just saying that these sort of things are they're things that people would actually want to have. It's not as though they'll be forced upon people. But I think when we look at things like this, I think what we need to constantly remind ourselves is that these things, God, he knows about all of these things. So it's not as though this thing is suddenly going to be sprung on the world and it should come as a surprise to us as Christians. And we always, I think it's also important to remind ourselves that when we're even looking at these beasts, that we keep saying phrases like it was granted to them or they were given the power. So it's not as though they're not like it's very important that we continue to remind ourselves that they're not God. Nobody gives God power. Nobody grants God authority. He has all the power. He has all the authority. It belongs to him. And there is no authority and there is no power that exists without he say so. And, when we look into the Old Testament, even with Pharaoh, the scripture says that even he was created to show God's glory. Even Pharaoh himself, when he was exercising that authority and that power that he had, it was all for God's glory. So even in all of these things that we're seeing, it can be quite, like you said, it can be quite daunting to think that there'd be a time when, as Christians, we would be faced with these. They're life or death situations, aren't they? And some Christians are actually facing them in the world today. They're in certain countries where you profess to be a Christian. It's a death sentence. It isn't just the fact that you'll be without a job or you lose your home or anything. It is an actual death sentence. But again, when we go back to verse 8 of chapter 13, and it says that all who dwell on the earth will worship him. He's talking about the beast here, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. And I think in your translation, it actually reads much better. I think it says that, what does yours say in verse 8? It reads,
verse 8, and all who dwell on the earth will worship it, everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain.
Exactly. So it's actually saying there that our names were written in this book of life before the foundation of the world. So it's difficult to imagine that even before. We're talking about centuries, aren't we? Thousands of years ago, that our names were written in before we were born. Our names were written in the Lamb book of life. And so God knew that there'll be a time when we'll be doing this podcast here. All the people that are listening, he knew that there'll be a time here, and he knows what's in our hearts. When I read this, sometimes it can be quite frightening. You think to yourself, God, if I was faced with that situation now where, I couldn't do anything, I couldn't buy any food to eat, I couldn't pay my bills, I couldn't do anything because I refused to receive this mark. Sometimes you think, well, you might feel that you could be strong for yourself. Or what about your children? If you've got young children, how could you sit by and watch your children starve or go without things because you know that it's the right thing to do? And the way that I keep looking at this is that even as we're studying the book of Revelation now, it's because God wants to prepare us. He doesn't want us to be ignorant of these things when they happen. We might be here when the things happen, we might not be, but regardless of that, he wants to prepare us. And the preparation really is to understand, what God has done for us, who he is, what he has done for us. It says here that our names written. It's not something that he just did a couple of years ago when we decided to give our life to Christ. It says before the foundation of the world that our names were already written in that Lamb's book of life. And so all the things that we're going to be going through, for the rest of this year, for the rest of our lives here on the earth, we need to entrust that to God, because he already knows the beginning from the end of all things. And that's where we draw encouragement from, because we might be looking at our lives now and be thinking to ourselves, my goodness, there's no way I'll be able to stand in the face of such persecution like this. I just wouldn't be able to do it. If it's not for my sake, then for the sake of my children, I couldn't do it. But we need to trust God with that, to say, okay, I'm not there now, but by continually, encouraging one another, listening to the word, sticking with Christians who believe the scriptures, who believe in the truth, who you can see the love of God in their life, staying with them, we can encourage one another. I was looking at it, Ben, like someone who's preparing for a marathon, who has never done any exercise or never run a race before. I mean, how would you do it? To think, so how am I going to run for 26 miles? I can't even, run 100 meters, And how would you do it? In reality, you would start with little things, wouldn't you? You'd buy yourself a pair of running shoes, get the appropriate clothing, probably
Yeah.
look for a coach, someone who, like Justin, who's done many marathons and many half marathons. You look for a group of people who you could say, let's learn together, let's learn, let's prepare ourselves for this marathon together. Because there'll be times when you'd wake up, if you were on your own, you think, I don't feel like it today. But if you knew that there were another 5 or 6 people who were dependent on you, you would force yourself to get up so that you could be part of that group. And that's what our Christian life is all about, is that we don't, I mean, this is the marathon that we're running, this race of life that we're running. We're not prepared for it. We've never run it before, and it's all new to us. But by relying on God, reading His Word, fellowshipping with other Christians, encouraging one another, that is how we're going to be able to run this race. And if we happen to be around when these things are happening, that's the only way we're going to be able to stand, in those times.
It brings up an interesting question, which will be our final point, as we're like at the 1:45 mark now. I come across like this question in one of the commentaries. It was like, so with all these things going on, with this stuff that's coming against Christians and these persecutions, are we to fight back? Are we to join like revolutionary groups and fight back and resist this kind of thing? Bearing in mind verse 10 that we had a couple of translations on, if anyone's taken captive, to captivity he goes, anyone slain he will be slain. And it's almost to the point that God doesn't want violent reaction against this. There was a good quote about pastors in Germany when the Nazis were arising. It says about, we're not to demonize the state unless if it over kind of over eggs its kind of line of authority. If it starts telling Christians that they can't worship, or they they must bow down to this or bow down to that, that's crossing a line. But as people, we're meant to be good citizens, pay our taxes, abide by the laws, all that kind of thing. But when the state crosses the line, that's when you if you like, passively resist these things. But pastors who stood against Hitler, they were arrested and thrown into jail. And one pastor was in jail, and a shocked prison chaplain come to him and said, "What are you doing in jail?" And the prisoner, the pastor who was in jail, said to the chaplain, "Brother, why are you not in prison?" So it's like, there's a passive resistance. People were being asked to conform to things, and others were refusing and taking the consequences. And that is an act of faith, because you've got to rely on God in those situations. There are many testimonies of those that passively resisted in that way, and sometimes it cost them their lives, but other times they were respected for their choice. And it's it will come to that. In Revelation we can see it will come to that. And it's we have the victory. That's what we sing, that's what we preach, that's what we that is the truth. That's our truth. We have the victory in Jesus, no matter what happens in the world. When the world shakes, we're not to panic. When all this stuff is going on, like the pandemic and the wars and all this kind of thing, the world panics. But we are built on the rock. The foundation of our faith is the rock of Jesus, and it's a strong rock. And that rock, we haven't got time, but in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, where Daniel sees this statue, built of different materials representing the empires, the feet of this thing are made of iron, but also made of clay mixed together. And it represented the Roman Empire, which seemed absolutely impossible to overcome. But yet a rock is thrown at this representation of the Roman Empire, and because it has weakness in it, it kind of explodes, and this thing comes toppling down. And it's the same promise here. with the beast. You know, the persecutions of the end times may seem absolutely colossal, and even, you know, people are saying, who can resist the beast? So we surrender. It seems like an impossible thing to overcome, but Jesus is the rock, and he is still the rock that is cast at all the enemies and all the things that come against him, which we will see as Revelation goes on. And, you know, cast down the enemy, and we are to remain faithful. You know, Jesus is our victor. He's the one who fights, and we're to trust in him.
Amen.
Any last words, Pastor Akin?
Amen. I just say amen to that, Ben. Amen to that. That's the truth. That's the truth that we need to hold on to. Amen.
It is. Right, well, that is Revelation 13 and the two beasts. We'll be coming back next week. I'm not sure if Pastor Ian is back in time for Word Up next week.
Not next week. He's not back next week, no.
Okay. So we'll be here again with chapter 14.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Which gets into the Lamb and the 144,000 make a reappearance, which will be exciting. So bless you all. Please tune in tomorrow morning to start the day, which will be on Facebook Live at 7 o'clock in the morning. It should be Jay tomorrow, and every day through the week, actually. And it's so good, guys. Honestly, it's so good. And a quick promotion of the Unsubscribed podcast. My goodness, we're turning into a business. The Unsubscribed podcast, the latest episode. I'll say no more, but go and listen. If you're a Word Up fan and listener, go over to Unsubscribe and listen to the latest episode. Bless you all. Hallelujah.
Bless.
And
Thank you.
we'll love you. We'll see you soon.
God bless everyone. Good night.